Hey everyone, Caleb with the Antique Book Collective, and today I'm getting to you guys with a little bit of a bonus video. So I was actually recording the last first edition video on the 1980s, and I actually sold a book as I was making that. So this book actually it's an interesting one, but it's not what I'm here to talk about. What I'm here to talk about is an interesting phenomena that I find all the time with my book selling. And I from what I have heard, I've seen the same sort of thing happen with a lot of other things, like clothing and stuff like that. And that is, you buy something from somewhere and then you sell it not across the country, not across the world, but maybe something more like across the street or across the city. And that's happened to me so much of the time. Like, I buy these really random books that I'm like, oh, I doubt there's much of a market for this, but because I've been doing it so long, I'm like, I know for a fact when I sell this, it's going to be something local. Like, I don't know why, but it feels like that's something that's going to happen. So for me, this particular book that I have, the last owner actually wrapped it in plastic. This was an estate sale that I did locally, and I actually just sold it. As I said, I just sold it, and I sold it locally, which I think is the funniest thing. So taking it out of the little plastic sleeve, which I think is really stinking neat, but I might end up getting some of those for some of the books I have, but that's that. So this book, you guys probably could see it a little bit better now. Just showing it off to you guys because I think it's a really neat book. So it is On the Laws of Japanese Painting by Henry P. Bowie, Bowie. And it's an older book. It's from 1911. It's got some nice Japanese, I want to say that's kanji. I don't remember for sure. I'm not a Japanese big nerd. My school, they actually taught Japanese, so that's the only reason why I would know any of the words. But yeah, I didn't learn Japanese there. I learned Spanish because I wanted something I can use. But yeah, it's a nice book on all the different rules of doing Japanese artwork. And for me, when I bought this one, I actually was doing it with my mom at the time. I ended up buying her out because she didn't like doing the business anymore. She said I was too bossy. My bad. I guess I tried too hard. It's a very complicated business, as you guys probably know if you've been doing antique book selling. It's a very complicated thing, so you might come off as bossy if you try to bring anyone else on, which stinks because I like doing it with my mom, but she didn't like it in the long run, so she's now started trying to do it on her own. We'll see if she ends up finishing with that, but all that sort of stuff. So just some more Japanese artwork inside this. But when I bought this book, I was thinking, okay, On the Laws of Japanese Painting, that is either going to sell to someone who's married to Japanese, who is Japanese, or is interested in Japanese culture. And for me, I have been around long enough to know that Japanese culture is a lot more popular here on the West Coast than it is on the East Coast, at least from my experience. Besides that, I also know that we have a very large Japanese culture and population here I live in Oregon, so around here in Oregon there's a lot of them. Down in California there's a lot. When I lived in Hawaii, that was a huge portion of the population. Honestly, I'm not sure if I would say a majority, but it's a very strong population for Hawaii. So when I bought this book, I was like, okay, I know for a fact it's going to sell somewhere on the western US. I wouldn't be surprised though if it is somewhere around me. So for me, I live in Portland area. I don't live in Portland itself because I would die. I'm moving away, in the process of moving away, so I got my moving sale going on. I'm accepting like all the different offers I can, so I actually took $5 less on this. But with all that said, this book, I got it and I was like, oh, this is going to sell locally because it's just such a specific thing. It seems like it sell locally, and that's something that you guys will find as you're doing your businesses. If you find something really specific and really weird, it's like, oh, that's not going to sell to someone in Canada. That's going to sell to someone across the street from where I bought it. And for me, I actually have traveled like all the way, like a couple states over, and I've bought books, and I've ended up selling those same books to someone that lives quite near where I ended up buying them in the first place, which I always think is the funniest thing. So that's something you guys will probably find. And at the end of the day, if you guys buy books locally, offering local shipping on different things can actually be very beneficial, because for something like this, someone's going to buy it locally most likely. So this person that ended up buying this, so let me just draw a little diagram for you guys. So let's say, I'm just going to draw right here. So this is Washington, this is Oregon, and yes, both states are basically rectangles. And Portland is like right here. And then Vancouver is where I just sold it, and it's like literally right across the border. There's a bridge that connects the two cities, and that's where this one just sold. So the person that bought this, I believe, is not doing local pickup, which sort of stinks because they're gonna have to pay $4 or whatever for shipping, but at the end of the day it works out well for me because the shipping actually will be a little bit less, so they'll have to pay a little bit less. But I mean, it's just fun to see a book that is like this, that I've had it for a few months. Let me actually check right here. So it was listed, it looks like, in July of last year. So I've had this book for 1 month and let's see, almost exactly 1 year and 2 months. Sorry, so almost an exact year and 2 months. I'm just 2 days shy of that right now, which is interesting, but I've been hanging on to this for a while, and I was like, oh, I wonder when that's going to sell, because I have all my books sell. Like, I have 100% sell through, but I hang on to some longer than others. So this one, again, it sold right across the street, basically, from where I bought it, and I always think that's the funniest thing, and I thought that you guys might think that's funny as well. I would love to hear what stories you guys have on that, because, like, for me, I've had some books sell that I'm like, okay, I literally think that house that I just shipped to is like 1 block over. Wait a minute, what? Pull it up on Google Maps, it's like, oh wow, sure enough, that's like a block away from where I sold it. I think that's the funniest thing. It's actually something that I enjoy as a bookseller, because it like makes it so the entire story of this book is like a little cooler. It's like a little bit closer to home. Like, it's one thing to be like, oh yeah, I bought this book, then I took it to Europe, and then I sold it here, and then da 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 da. Like, that's cool and all, but it's like even more interesting to think, what made someone 50 years ago like something that someone 40 years ago, and then da 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 da. Like, it's interesting to just play with, like, in your mind, the whole storyline of who has owned this book, what have they done with it, you know? And that's something that, for me, I like history stuff, so it's something that I like playing around with in my head. It's like, oh, I wonder why someone just across the street liked the same book that this guy liked. I don't know. That's just something I thought would be cool, would make a good video. Again, I'd love to hear what you guys have had, like, with your own experiences down below. Like, how many books have you guys had sell to, like, the same city, or at least the same couple cities, the same metro area, you know? So with all that said, I would love to hear again in the section below. Be sure to check out one of my other videos, and we'll be back to doing the first edition series as soon as I get back to that. So see you guys in the next one.